Hey everyone, Travis here from Paid Memberships Pro. Thank you very much for stopping by to watch our first ever Paid Memberships Pro Ask Us Anything session. In today's video, myself and a couple of my teammates will tackle your top 5 questions that you send through to us either in our blog or social media. Now, the video that you're going to watch today is actually a pre-recorded video, and we will be online ready to answer any questions that you might have. So if you're around, please do send us a message in the live chat section or ask us a question. Like I said, we will be online and we will be available to answer your questions. Now, if you are watching this and you are not watching along during the premiere stream, then unfortunately we probably won't be online, so you might want to just reach out to us via our website. With that being said, let's go ahead and start the video. All right, thanks everyone for joining us today in our first Ask Us Anything session. We've recently been engaging with a lot of people over social media, the Paid Memberships Pro community, and we wanted to start this kind of content where we just reach out to the community and ask you guys about, like, if you wanted to give us any questions that you had. And now we are here with a couple of the Paid Memberships Pro team members and we are ready to answer your questions. So we got a bunch of questions and we've had a few overlapping ones, and we decided to take 5 questions that we thought was going to be relevant to the majority of those who had some questions to ask. And yeah, so we've nailed them down to 5 top questions. And I think the first question that we're going to ask is going to be directed at Kim. And this comes from a person, and they asked, Kim, how can I leverage Paid Memberships Pro for events? I work with an organization that hosts regular events, conferences, and get-togethers. Any ideas?
Okay, well, good question. And we actually recently did a project surrounding events and wrote an add-on for a few of the most popular plugins that handle events and ticketing for WordPress. So events are an area where there's lots of ways that membership and events can overlap. I've talked to organizations that have events that are for members only. I've talked to organizations that offer a discounted price for event attendance to people who are officially members. And then some organizations have events that are public. Anyone can register and come. Again, you could have a public price and a members only price. So depending on how you are tackling events with your organization, you may need a different solution. So for now, the events add-on that we do offer, I think it offers integration for the timely all-in-one events, the plugin called the Events Calendar. There's a plugin called Tribe Events, and then there's a more lightweight solution called Sugar Calendar. So of those options, if you're already using one that works well for you, continue using it. If you're not if you haven't chosen one yet, the Events Calendar is my go-to. Not only I think it's easy to use from the admin, but I also think it's easy to develop and extend of all the ones we worked with. And in that case, they do have an events ticketing option. So using our add-on and their plugin, you could create an event and restrict it to certain levels, or you could leave it unrestricted, and then you could use certain filters to hide the ticketing option for members only. The other unique caveat with events is how much information do you show publicly and how much information is kept private for members. So there's a lot of components to it. So if that particular person wants to reach back out and tell us a bit more about how they want to run events, or anyone else that wants to, we can kind of see what's the right fit for you.
Right, and I know that for a time when someone came with an event query over on email support or on our forums or our member support area, we would often, before we actually had these event integrations that we do now, we'd often have, or we'd recommend using the add-on packages add-on. Is that something that can still be used? Because I quite like the idea of, being a member and then, purchasing a one-time kind of access to an event. Is that add-on still relevant? Can we use that?
Yeah, that would totally work in this case. You don't get all the features of an events plugin, so you don't get a calendar that says when the next event is. But if you're not running loads of events, if you run maybe an annual meeting, and it's kind of a thing you need to provide a lot of content about, a lot of information about, add-on packages would be a really good fit. The add-on packages add-on, for those that aren't familiar, it allows you to set an individual price on a specific post in WordPress. So you can say the page, and I titled it Annual Meeting 2020, costs $250 to buy. So you have to wrap your brain around that and say, okay, I'm buying a page, but they're not buying a page. They're buying admission to your meeting. They're buying content that surrounds the meeting that you're going to publish on your site. There's filters in that add-on to say all subpages of my page get included. So if your add-on had, or if your meeting had a general information page, it had a page about the schedule, it had a page about lodging options, and had a page about a call for speakers, you could nest all of that content under that top level page, sell the meeting access page, but still people would get this kind of more rich experience. So I would suggest that if you're not running loads of events, and maybe it's just like a one-off or maybe 5 a year or fewer kind of option that you don't need those rich event plugin features for.
Kim, one more follow-up question that I thought about while you were speaking. With regards to the add-on packages, is there a way that you could notify the admin or give some sort of proof that, for the member, once they've purchased the access to this page, like I've got a valid ticket or I've got a valid entry, or is there any way to trace it for both parties, say member or admin, like, yes, I have purchased access to this page and I am going to this conference?
So when a user purchases a page, a piece of content using add-on packages, they get a confirmation email just like they would for a membership checkout. It's an order. So you can definitely filter and get a view of the people who've completed that order. You could add content to that confirmation message specific to the event. We don't do anything like a QR code for event sign-in or anything like that. But the good thing is that you could leverage the code that exists today and write your own extension to do those kinds of things just with the way that's coded. It would be really great if that add-on had kind of a filtered view of a report that said, these 20 people bought this page. It's certainly something we should look into as a team, put it on the growing list of issues for that add-on. But yeah, it would definitely make it a more robust solution for using it as an ad hoc event management system.
So next up, I have a question from a member. They asked, Andrew, how do you prioritize or balance the time given to development and support? Then they even elaborated here a little bit. They are both important, but either of the two can easily demand time from the other. So I think that's a good question. Both support and development are equally important, but you can't necessarily spend too much time on either. Andrew, how does your team balance that, and how do you find that ratio?
Yeah, so I think support kind of takes a little bit more priority over the development side of things, because it's a lot of like problems or bug fixes that we have to figure out for customers, and customer satisfaction is really important to keep the business running on like a day-to-day basis. But with that being said, we still kind of figuring out the like teething issues of the fine line between, okay, you've done too much support or you're doing too much development, which I don't think there is too much of either. So we're busy restructuring a more structured way of defining the scope of each. And yeah, so our team, our days do depend on how busy support is. Like generally a Monday, we know, like the whole team knows a Monday is going to be priority focused because of the backlog over the weekend. And then during the course of the week, we'll free up time by attending to the unassigned tickets, and that will free up time for the developers and some of our support team to do the bug fixes, to do the development. And we try to keep it at a 50-50 kind of thing. But again, priority does go to support, especially if it's like after sale or Monday, or we just notice like, hey, there's a lot of support tickets. um, you know, so they're going hand in hand, but it is we're still learning to do it.
It is a bit of a balancing act. I wanted to ask you, so you've obviously been working for Paid Memberships Pro for a number of years now, and you have gone from being support engineer to someone who's managing a team at the moment, and someone who works in a distributed company. You've worked with support engineers from different time zones all over the world, and we've recently tried to consolidate a team that's more or less on the same time zone to try and work together. How have you found that transition from working completely, in a sense, distributed? We are still a distributed team, but now we've got a narrower time zone. Have you felt that's helped? And what are some of the pros and cons that you've found being a team lead over that?
Yeah, so being in the same time zone or within a time zone that's not too far apart, it's a lot easier to get help and offer help to other team members. And communication's a lot easier because with the time zone between US and South Africa, it's like 6-7 hours. By the time we ending the day, the other team members are starting the day, which is like a good thing, because we basically working almost like 24 hours in a day with a time zone difference. But just the communication and being able to communicate on the same time zone, like having someone available in your hours is like so beneficial, where you can just bounce ideas off then and there. You don't have to like wait a couple of hours to get a reply. So the communication's a lot more fluid and less delayed, so we can be more effective as a team in the same time zone. Um, with that being said, we're still doing support throughout, US and SA time zones. I guess it is a bit tricky for customers that are outside of our time zone, where we might be replying at like 2 a.m. their time and then ending at like 8, 9, 10 a.m. their time, where it doesn't give enough time for them to answer, if that makes sense. They're not at their work or at the computers when we're replying. Um,
Jason, I saw. I'm gonna just reel you in here. I hope you don't mind. I saw you nodding quite a bit while Andrew was speaking. As owner and lead developer of the company, have you seen, or I know you've mentioned that we've been able to actually reduce the turnaround time for support. It's becoming a bit of a support heavy question, but I just thought it might be interesting. Have you seen a dramatic change in how we do support and how like happier our customers are, our turnaround time, anything like that you might want to share with us?
Yeah, it's complicated. I think, and everything Andrew said is spot on, and and correct. And support really is like the first thing that we focus on as a business, because it's like what we charge for, and that's like what maintains the business. And then we have that money and development time we can spend to maintain the project. And yeah, that kind of nature of like, how do you offer both like 24-hour coverage on support, but still deliver like the quality of support that we want? I get your specific question. Has support gotten better? We track metrics like time till first reply, average number of replies in the thread, and time it takes to complete. And all those metrics are like trending in the right direction. And especially in the beginning of this year, when we implemented some updates to our tooling to like really improve our process flows. So on the end user side, all they saw now is that it's more of a ticket system than a forum. But it still just looks like a form for them, but they only see their stuff. But on our side, we have a bunch of tools to handle like assigning and managing, handing off tickets between team members and things like that. And since we've done that, like we've just improved like how we're handling support ourselves. But that's like specifically to like the time zone issue. We really are like the kind of support that we offer for Paid Memberships Pro is in my opinion, and I think it is based on talking to other, people who run WordPress products. It's a higher level of engagement than other stuff. It's not like, where do I find the docs and we link to it? Sometimes we get those, but there's a higher number of like, really have to spend time to think about the customer's specific solution, really have to debug the customer's specific setup, really have to talk a developer through how to design something that's going to work on our platform. And so it's a bit more complicated. And because of that, it's more important that like our support team is all working at the same time, like Andrew said, so that they can pull from each other. The staff that has more experience with events or more experience with multi-site, they can ask each other. That said, when we're a small team, so we spread out a little bit, and we're like, you know what, like the quality of support needs to improve. Like we're gonna focus our support in that European African time zone, where like most of our support staff is. That said, like it's really important for customers that we just get back to them as quickly as possible, even if we don't solve the solution. So we're working on ways to have like a triage level of support so that they know that we're listening. That's it. Like if someone asks a question at like 2 a.m. our time, and we get back to them like soon, whenever we get back to people, and it's usually, if someone sends an email or support ticket and I just happen to be looking at the screen the second it comes in and you reply to it immediately, like it just makes their day. They're like, wow, that was so amazing. So we want to do that as much as possible while still being able to control, the quality of support in a small team.
Right. Okay, great. Thanks for that. Kim, I wonder if I could just jump to you. We had a question come in about the status on MMPU. And for those who don't know, MMPU is an add-on that's been in the works for a while now. It's the multiple membership per user add-on, and it's been very popular in the sense of people have asked for it and people have got a lot of use cases for it. Now, it's currently in sort of like a beta release where, and feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, it's a bit of a beta release in the sense that it works, but it's not compatible with all of our add-ons. So is there some sort of update that you could share with? Is there any, chance that it's going to be more released that, it works with the rest of our add-ons more?
For multiple memberships per user to work, every add-on that looks for a level and expects a single result has to be updated. But not every add-on interacts with levels in that way. So some are already compatible, and we just have to make sure that we've reflected that on the add-on docs page. So if you go to one of our add-on docs page, in the left sidebar, we have a few kind of details about the add-on. I'm pulling it up on another screen here. So the main column has, installation setup, a video if it's available, screenshots, and on your left side column, you're going to see a rating that has the ease of use. So the most easy to use add-ons, you can activate them and then you do nothing. It's a little bit, and that's like a 4. A 1 level is like you're going to need a developer with experience coding PHP, using hooks and action filters to really make that add-on work. The next section shows some categories that the add-on is assigned to. And then the last section of that sidebar indicates whether or not the add-on is compatible with MMPU. There's certainly add-ons in our library that we look at and we say, like, this will never be compatible. And then there's add-ons that we say, like, this is going to take time. We should make it compatible. We hope that we can. And then there's some that are out of the box compatible or that integration has already been completed. The multiple memberships per user add-on was written in collaboration with a development partner in Oregon. They had some clients that really needed that feature. And we knew that it was important as well, so we collaborated to develop it. And what's excellent about being open source and staying open source with all of our add-ons is that they're contributing more add-on integration and add-on support. So actually one just came in. Which add-on was it? It might have been the recurring email warnings or email confirmation add-on. Trying to think. They just wrote. You're going to find it. So they actually just did a pull request and notified us like, hey, we just did this for you. We're not paying them to do it. They have customers that they're profiting from to create these features, and they're contributing them back. So that's where open source is a major win, and where add-ons will continue to get developed out of that need. and out of that it's kind of a privately funded development, because I'm sure they're not doing it out of complete goodness of their hearts. There was no MMPU contributor day yet, but we don't have a timeline for any of these add-ons becoming MMPU compatible that are not yet. But it does bring up the question again, reminds me to go back through and make sure that I've at least reflected on the add-on page if it's a yes, if it's a no, or if it's maybe sometime in the distant future, no date given on each of our add-ons. So if whoever asked that question wants to check out a few of them and see if it doesn't have that rating yet, just let me know, and we'll update it with kind of where our heads are at related to each of those add-ons.
Yeah.
Great, thanks.
Yeah, they can always. Sorry, I'll just jump in. They can always ask us, hey, will this combination of add-ons work with my MMPU setup? And there's still, I guess I also want to say, like, at one point we have a blog post about like the workarounds for MMPU, and I still, in some cases, the quote unquote workaround is actually a better solution than using the MMPU plugin. So, I mean, it's worth like reading through that page and trying to understand like the thinking of when something is actually a different level, or maybe it's just an option on an existing level. Or when like a bundle of levels could work better than having separate levels for different things. When you should move on to using something like WooCommerce, or like another system to manage different pieces of it. Because every once in a while something else is better. And then I did find out that the plugin that Squarelines updated was the extra expiration warning emails plugin.
I knew it was email.
Yeah, extra expiration warning email. So that's our add-on that Paid Memberships Pro by default sends a warning 7 days before membership expires. But if you want to send emails 60 days, 30 days, and 7 days, you would use that add-on. And I haven't pushed the update out, but it'll be out before this video gets published. So
I had a thought when you were talking, Jason. All of our add-ons aren't compatible with each other either. And that is another piece that's like, there's some that are like inherently contradictory, that will never be compatible. We talk about ways to make that clear, but there's so many permutations. It's like, you could put cheese, pepperoni, olives, but you can't put pineapple on this pizza. Like, there's just one thing that is not allowed. And people might find that just in the wild, or it might be obvious when you read what if you're using an add-on to add billing address fields and you're using another add-on or custom code to hide them? Like, that is, a car crash. So just like all the add-ons aren't yet MMPU compatible, all of the add-ons aren't in the same swimming pool, happily swimming around together either.
Awesome. Great. Okay, thanks for that. While we're on the subject of add-ons and development, Jason, I have a question for you from someone who asked, Jason, how do you decide when a release is good to go? Do you have a process to minimize the friction of a release?
Yeah, so I guess I could talk about this a lot, like we think about it a lot, but it comes down to a simple answer. So hopefully I'll talk through it and then I'll end up with like the simple answer. But basically for the core plugin, this is our process. And for each of our add-ons, it's basically the same process, but just on a different scale. We target having an update for Paid Memberships Pro once per month. So we don't want there to be too many updates, because that's annoying for people who are using the plugin to have to update and possibly test, and kind of be worried about pushing updates. And at the same time, we don't want there to be too few updates, because not only is our plugin developing, like we're adding features and making things better, but the whole environment that your WordPress website lives in is constantly being updated. Gateways are changing how they work, laws are changing, WordPress is changing, your theme and all the other plugins you work with, the host, everything's changing. So we have to constantly like keep pace with that. So you're going to have updates. So we target once a month. And then I was talking earlier about the complexity of, our support, but there's 80,000 sites running Paid Memberships Pro and 90 add-ons. or so, and different combinations of hosting and gateway and other themes and stuff. And so there, compatibility issues come up, and we fix them. When a bug comes up, we figure out how important is that bug, like what's the impact, is it high, medium, or low, like are a lot of people having this bug, then it's important. But maybe it's just like there's an extra space somewhere, something looks a little different, that's not that important. But maybe only a few people are having a bug, but it like totally breaks your whole entire site, or it deletes data, or sales stop happening. That means that's really important. So as these bugs come in, we fix them, and we kind of push them and get them ready to go out with the next release. And so some of these bugs are easy, like, hey, that's just broken, now it's fixed, it's good to go. And some development is bigger, or it's more complicated. Like recently we updated the whole checkout process with Stripe, and lots of people have customized their checkout process through add-ons, or actually, custom code, or just design changes. And the process is so different that it's going to break things. And so the update's important. Like, you want to be on the latest version of Stripe's API for regulation reasons. You want it to be, compatible with all the existing laws. You want it to be secure. You want to be on the latest version of PMPro, but it may also break things. So we kind of have this balancing act, and this is like where I get to like, this is the actual question. When do we make a release? You have this balancing act of, there's a bunch of new features and enhancements that's going to make the plugin better for most people using the plugin. But potentially sometimes it's going to break the site for others. And we try to be as backwards compatible as possible, but sometimes we just can't do it. And so when the update is going to fix the site for more users than it's going to break the site, then we push it. So that's kind of basically the decision we have to make, is like, this update is ready and it's going to make the plugin or the add-on better for more people, the most people, and then we push it. And this is really important. The whole time we're doing that, we try to be as open and transparent as possible, so that you don't click the update button and things break. We try whenever possible to like catch the things they're going to break and warn you, to progressively degrade, so it's like things don't just break completely, it just gets a little worse, and just be backwards compatible, so you can't tell, but give you a notice like, hey, in the future you're going to have to update this, and communicate ahead of time. So for instance, for the update we had most recently to Stripe that was very large, we had release candidates earlier in the summer. We had like 3 of them, I think. And so they went out, they weren't pushed out to everyone, but developers could opt into it and test things. And we got a lot of feedback and avoided a lot of issues when we did that. So we're going to do that as much as possible for big updates. But I mean, the nature of the system, like I said, it's a complicated setup with a lot of moving parts, and sometimes things break, and we have to move fast to get like a fix out that's going to, fix the site, fix the plugin for more people.
And while you were speaking, I was reminded about times when we've released a brand new add-on or a brand new feature. I don't know if we could maybe just open it up to you or anyone to maybe comment on, but say, for example, if you have an idea, there's a feature that's regularly requests, okay, we're going to build this kind of add-on. How do you sort of map out releasing that add-on? Have you got an idea, like this is what the end result should be? Because ideally what you want to have is like this is kind of the end goal of what we want the feature to do, and once it reaches that level we'll release it. But the danger with having that approach is it can kind of like scope creep, can just kind of go on forever, and you can keep adding little bits to it, and you never kind of release it. Have you got any ideas around releasing like a fresh add-on or a fresh feature?
Yeah. And because we view Paid Memberships Pro as a platform, and we expect people to build different membership solutions on top of it, we're often working at the edge. So it's not a typical SaaS, like software as a service, where we have control over everything. We distribute the plugin, and then people build different things on top of 80,000 different sites. And so there's lots of that work going on. Like it's a little bit different maybe if we had like a self-contained product that only did one thing. But that said, like when someone says, hey, this is an interesting idea, I think we should be able to do this with Paid Memberships Pro. Like we encourage that. And there's kind of a natural life cycle of an idea comes in and it starts out as a customization for one site. And then we turn that into like a code gist that's generalized and can be used by a developer on multiple Paid Memberships Pro sites. And then if that's like gets traction and is interesting, then we might build like a plugin that's like an add-on to implement that feature and make it easier to install and update, when things are going. But our plugins, when they start out, are still like very developer focused because, instead of having a settings page, you have to tweak some variables in code to get the settings set up.
Right.
And then if that gains traction, then we start adding a GUI UI. The UI and UX team comes in and really works on the plugin to make it like a featured product that's easy to use and more accessible. And so this can be frustrating for people who aren't developers, and they come in and they say like, oh, can I, I'm trying to think of a really good example, but it's like, can I require that when members cancel, level, the level they're on, I want to give them a default level, something like that. So that's something that today you can do by code. Or people want different pricing, if I'm purchasing this level, but it's an annual renewal, but I'm going to renew three months before the end of the year, I should get a discount. So there's all these kind of like extra cases that people want to do. Maybe even like adding fields. So yeah, maybe there's a better one. Everyone wants to add profile fields to the checkout page. And this is one that started out as custom code and currently is a plugin, but requires some development and is soon going to move into a plugin that doesn't require as much development. So they say, hey, I want to add fields to my checkout page. At this time, they have to install that plugin, and then you can hire us through the support forms. We'll do up to 5 fields for you, or you need a developer. And yeah, like so that's frustrating for non-developers to know that something is possible, but they can't do it themselves. But in reality, like when we have the code to get something done, we want to push it out there so that developers can use it. And we also like want to see if there's traction on an idea. A lot of times an idea comes in and we build something and we're super excited about it. And we want to go to the next level to build like a plugin that's easy to use and has a GUI, but that takes a lot of time. And we're like, is it really worth it for us to take the time? And not only that, like, are we going to do it in the correct way? If we assume that there's certain features, like this is a must-have feature for anyone who's doing this, profile fields have to be drag and drop, or people aren't going to want to do that. That might not be the case. Like maybe, a simpler implement, like in having like a developer-focused plugin out there, having code just out in the wild that are getting use, gives us feedback for like, here's how people are actually using it. Like, our donation plugin, we have like a donation plugin and a variable pricing plugin, and they kind of started in different places, and now they're kind of on a collision course. It's like there's such an overlap of people who want to charge, so a variable price, like pay what you want on checkout, is a pretty popular thing. Like musicians have put up like their CDs for sale, their album, you could pay $0 or up to however much you want. But only a few people with actual products are doing that. Most people with variable pricing are getting donations, like a Patreon model. And so the overlap, so we wouldn't have known that, 2 years ago when we first released both those plugins, but now we've gotten that feedback to like, oh, these are kind of the same thing. So when we get to the point where we're going to build like an actual product that's more end user driven, we have more information about what to do, and it's going to be a better process. But it's a slow process because there's, it's a large platform. There's tons of users. And it takes time to do this stuff, but we focus on the ones that we think are most important, and we try to improve our add-ons and make them more ease of use. And I'm trying to encourage more developers to get involved in other companies to kind of own pieces of the platform. Like Kim said, Squarelines has done a good job of taking feature products, plugins that are important to the subset of customers that they have and working on them. And behind the scenes, we don't have to spend all the time developing, but we talk with them to say, hey, are you doing this in the way that's going to make sense with how add-ons should integrate? in our platform. And then at the same time, it's important that I think we could always do a better job, and we're constantly tweaking our documentation to make it, to set expectations for end users, because all they do is they Google, can I do this with Pay Memberships Pro? And they come to our page and we say, yes, you can do this with Pay Memberships Pro, use this. And then they start working on it and they're like, oh, I need to be a developer to do this. I didn't realize. And so it's like, how can we make that, like Kim mentioned, how on our add-ons, we have like the 1 to 5 rating scale of how complicated that add-on is. We want to do stuff like that in more places across like our plugins, both like in the documentation and also like within the plugin itself, just to set the expectation. And that's a challenge, because we could do that. What I'm worried about, because it happens when a non-developer starts doing something, they get in over their head, and then it's a bad experience for them. They're like, I thought I could do this, but I can't, and they're upset, like they wasted their time. And we're like, sorry. But at the same time, I don't want to be too heavy-handed and turn people away, because there's 80,000 sites using the plugin, and only 5,000 of them are a customer, and the rest of those 75,000 sites, they're not all developers. So there's tons of end users and power users and people of various skills getting stuff done with Pay Memberships Pro. And so, we have to strike that balance of like informing people like, hey, this part's difficult, without, just scaring people out of using the product entirely, because it's a very powerful, robust, good product, a really good way to get paid and do all these things that people are using our plugin for.
Great.
And can I add quick, sorry, Travis, that among our team, we have like the Jason level developer, and then, Andrew level developer, Kim level developer. We have people that work more on front end and people that work deep in the back end. So I think the front end people are the more champions for settings, the champions for easier, the champions for things that don't need custom code. And then the developer side people say, like, there's a way to do this with the filter. It's an option. We don't have to do that yet. So we kind of internally correct ourselves. If the people who interact with the customers more are getting loads of feedback, like, this is something we're heavily supporting, it's taking more time to provide support for through tickets, through member support, than it would take us to make the solution have an interface that was settings based. Then those things trickle up and those ideas trickle up to us, and then those things get developed. Not only, because they're popular, but because the cost to make it simpler is less than the cost to continue to support it. So it's just kind of like a interesting tap dance between a husband and wife sometimes of what gets a setting. What's day one and what's day future.
I'm glad you mentioned those points, because I actually have a question here which I'm going to just skip over for now, but I'll come back to that, which I think ties in nicely to what you were speaking about. But just to move away briefly from development and come back to support, Andrew, one of the users on your team had a question about him. So someone asked, why is Coetzee so awesome? And so, Andrew, I thought like maybe it would be fun if you could answer this. We don't have Theunis on the call, unfortunately, but Andrew, could you give us a little bit of insight as to why Coetzee is so awesome and why people are speaking about him?
So Theunis is super enthusiastic in learning, making customers happy. His energy to please the customer is on a super high level. And so he really just wants to please everyone and every ticket that he like handles. He wants a good outcome for the customer, and he's just super excited about PMPro and improving his development, his customer support skills, dealing with people. So yeah, he's put in a lot of hard work, and I guess it shows. So yeah.
I know that when Theunis was visiting us in the States, and we had a party here and invited a bunch of our friends, and also like being in New York City with him and at a work camp there, one thing I realized was like he's the kind of guy who he fits in like with anybody. He's interested in everybody and any kind of group he could talk to, no matter like what their background was, or their taste in music or food or jokes or anything. So I guess like in the real world and socially, he has that personality, and that probably comes across in his work too. Supporting people in the forums is that, like, no matter what type of customer they are, where they're coming from, he can relate to them on some level, and he pulls that into his work as well.
There's definitely like a wear and tear that support has on you, so we should do like a check back in a year and see if the wear and tear has caught up to Theunis.
Some customers are tough, but it's funny, like doing support. It can be draining on you because by definition, like, people have problems. That's why they're coming for support. And so you're dealing with people with problems. At the same time, it's so fun to be like seeing how people are actually using our software and what new and interesting ways. And we get tons of ideas that way. And that's another aspect of Tian's work, is that he's a champion for the ideas that come in. So he's not just answering the question. He's constantly thinking about like, oh, like I should bring this back to the rest of the team. Which is something that we try to do in general, and I think he jumps on that.
Great. Cool. So I have got one last question for us, and it's a bit of an interesting question. Jason, this one was for you, and I know that you can take lead on this question, but I kind of want to open it up to anyone who has some input. We're running low on time, so if we could just try and just keep it a bit streamlined here. So the last question of the day is, why is Paid Memberships Pro so developer focused or intense? Seemingly simple features often require coding knowledge to implement. Is there a reason for that? And now I know you've touched on it slightly previously, but maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on this topic, and feel free, anyone, to jump in, just raise your hand and we can let you give your say.
I guess I talked about this a little bit earlier when I was saying how Paid Memberships Pro is a platform, and we really build it in a way to make it flexible so that it can be used on as many sites as possible. And developers use it that way. And so when end users come in and they discover, that Paid Memberships Pro can do this, they get excited. They're like, I wish I could do that. And then they realize, like, oh, I need coding knowledge to do that. So I did talk about that a bit, but maybe I'll just stress the middle sentence there. It says seemingly simple features often require coding knowledge to implement. And this is something that's challenging, because that's exactly true. Like, we've realized this back from the consulting, from developing in general, like when we did consulting for clients, and now that we run a plugin and people use it. Some things seem like they should be simple, but from the development side, it's not. It's like, oh, just do this. And you're like, oh, but if we just do that, either that's actually harder to code than you might think, or that's so simple that every theme is already doing it. Every other plugin is already doing it. And so now you have to compete with them and figure out, like, navigate this, conflict, is kind of like integration issue. There's a lot of slippery slope stuff that happens where, so for example, if you add a feature to the plugin, there's often one or many logical next steps for that feature. We always tracked orders in Paid Memberships Pro since we built it in 2010. There's a database of orders, but it wasn't exposed to end users. They couldn't view the orders in any way. Customers could view their orders on the front end, but admins didn't have a way to look through orders. So we built like an interface. Hey, now you can look at the orders. And after we did that, it's like, oh, now you want to sort the orders. You want to search the orders. You want to export the orders to CSV. I want to be able to add new columns to the orders. I want to add new metadata for the orders. There's this column that's exposed. It's called status, but it's crazy confusing. And that used to be hidden to the users. And but now it's obvious that the status doesn't make sense. Now we need like a key for the status. So that's like what we deal with as developers. And actually, I have a lot of empathy. It can be frustrating, I guess. I can get defensive, and so it's like, that should be simple. Of course, that should happen. And you're like, no. But I also have a lot of sympathy. Like, I know that I'm the developer who does this for my whole life, and you're a user, you're not a developer, or even if you are, like that you don't. I try to empathize that they don't understand that end of things. yeah, like it can seem simple. I guess another thing at the same time is that some things that seem hard are actually easy. And so that's why it's important that we keep this communication open, like that we really talk with our customers and figure out what they're trying to do. Because sometimes, it can seem like, so some features that seem simple are actually really hard to do, and they can't know that. And it's on us to like educate and explain why that's the case. And we try to do a better job of that. Like, here's why we made this decision. Even if they don't agree with it, they'll appreciate like, oh, you're actually being thoughtful about things and not just ignoring it. And sometimes stuff seems complicated, but it's actually simple. And that's on us to figure out a way to package that up and make sure that that's in front of people so that they can use it.
Something I think I've talked to all of you individually or in group about is like simple compared to what. So you want Paid Memberships Pro to be more simple to use and less developer focused. Great, I do too. But guess what? It's a whole lot easier to do this than custom code it yourself, than to pay to have it developed by a private developer, than to make decisions about what your customers are going to need before you've even dipped your toe in building a membership business. So my reaction whenever anyone says that is I say, like, go build it yourself. How much would that cost you? Go spec that out. Even WordPress itself, I think, Jason, you mentioned this yesterday in the kitchen, like, yes, you can build a website on WordPress, but if you want to build a custom theme, you have to code it, and there's always going to be a balance between the trade-off of how easy something is to use and what your specific needs are and what it would cost you to develop privately to get to that point. I think my empathy is in the place where this person came to us and found this solution and hinged some hopes and dreams on starting a business that was going to make money for their family and get their message out to people and maybe overnight be successful, and they just wait and they watch that revenue number tick up. That's kind of where they're entering our ecosystem at. They have this idea. Their mom said you should make a business about it, and they're trying really hard to do it with the tools they have for the lowest cost possible. So I think that's where I get empathetic and I say, like, they're angry about having to code because they've hinged all these hopes and dreams on this succeeding for them to get them out of the situation they're already in or whatever it is. So it's super important that we're empathetic to that, but it's also, I hope hearing this and anyone that wants to talk more about it, I would gladly talk to you about it. I can understand our side. Yeah.
Yeah. I think something that's frustrating with software in general, and in particular in the WordPress space, is that with open source software that's free and available like WordPress, and I think users will install WordPress, which does so much, and then they install Paid Memberships Pro for free, and it does so much. And maybe they find like even like an add-on that's for free and it does so much. And then they need this one little thing at the end. And really they're getting all this for free. And then they say, I need to do this. It's like, it's not all this, it's one thing. And we'll say that one thing costs like $5,000 or something like that. And they're like, what? And so in their minds, they go from like all this stuff. I get a whole website for free. Like my hosting now on Gatsby is $5 a month or free or something. Like, so I get all this stuff for free, and like this thing that seems small is actually, is what I have to pay for. And I guess there's no easy, like, me trying to explain it now. Well, I'll try now, but like in reality, when you get to this point, WordPress costs at this point probably hundreds of millions of dollars a year to support. I don't think that's an exaggeration. Like the people who work on things in WordPress, millions of dollars a year of developer time going into keeping that running. If you go back the whole life of WordPress, it's like $1 billion or more of economic development to get WordPress to the point where it is now. And then even us from Paid Memberships Pro, we're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a year supporting Paid Memberships Pro, and you get all that for free, right? So we're spending all that, but you're not paying for it necessarily. But then when you come up to pay for it, this thing costs money, and that little thing has to be built on this platform that, it has a lot of moving parts. It's complicated. So it's not always easy, and so, yeah, it's shell shock. So it's like, and I always say, like, all of our customers, like, at some point, I guess it's not true because there's plenty of people using the plugin for free, but like at some point when they become a customer, like, it has to happen at some point where we get money from them, and we're kind of delaying that. And so, when people have to pay, it's always going to be frustrating when you have to pay if there's free alternatives, or in your mind you've been set up to think everything is free. And that's just a challenge, I guess, with open source software in general. And I think the WordPress economy is going to do a pretty good job of addressing it. Like, people are building platforms on top of our platform that are going to be customer focused, and in their mind they're going to be buying like a solution, a website of a certain kind, even like a whole package around the website that includes marketing and everything else, and kind of that's how they're going to integrate with it, and the software is just the platform. And then there's going to be some people who are trying to be scrappy and do it themselves, and they're going to, because it's possible, the software open source stuff is out there, they're going to put it together and try to make it work. And there's always going to be like an edge where, there's friction. They're like, I want a website just like the New York Times, but how can I do it for free instead of, the millions of dollars in support staff the New York Times has? Stuff like that is going to happen all the time.
So if you've made it this far, congratulations on making it the entire way through our Ask Us Anything session. We'd love to know more if this kind of content is valuable, so please let us know down in the comment section below. And to end off, we're basically going to let a video stream go for another 5 minutes. So if you are following along in the Premiere screening right now, please stick around and ask us any questions or comments on anything in the live chat section. We'll be more than willing to answer them. And again, thank you very much for stopping by to watch. Have a great day.
Let's do another one. That's so fun. I could do this like every week. Come on. Ask me anything.